Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root, where we dive deep into understanding and addressing root causes of chronic health issues so you can help and find healing inside and out, now and forever. Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root. I'm Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice, Trifecta Collective. Welcome to the podcast. So today I want to dive in and talk about hormone building and really talk about if we want to optimize hormones, whether this is for symptom relief because you're experiencing symptoms around ovulation in the second half of your cycle during your period, if you are struggling in perimenopause or early perimenopause, if you are just have some different things going on if you're trying to conceive, if you are postpartum. All of these things can be very relevant when we talk about building hormones. And basically what I'm going to really talk about is the foundations of hormone health and how our body produces hormones and a lot of we can call them raw materials and pathways that we need to have supported when it comes to hormonal support. And what does that really look like? And I'm going to go through a variety of different topics here, and I'm also going to go through some very simple places to start with all of this that are going to be more geared towards nutrition and how to maybe shift or modify what you're eating and lifestyle things. Anything bigger or deeper, certainly there's a lot that we could talk about here, and I'll mention some things here and there, but I'm not going to go too in depth into some of when we look at the bigger picture, if there are other things going on that are influencing hormones and or any of these nutrients or pathways that our body's using for these hormones. I'm not going to dive super deep into all of them. I'll mention them here and there, but I've done a lot of the other podcasts talking about these other things. Now, that being said, if you want me to do an episode and talk more around some of these things and dive deeper into one or two really specific areas, please let us know. I am always looking for other podcast ideas. So if something I talk about today kind of triggers that, send us a DM, comment on whatever platform you're using, send us an email, info@trifectacollective.net, whatever is easiest for you. And I'm always more than happy. And by the way, I do get some good podcast ideas from people who listen. So never hesitate. If you want to hear something on the podcast, let us know. I'm always looking for ideas. Okay, so let's start with the big one. And I know I talk about this so much, and it is really this important. So I am going to spend some time talking about it today. And I want to talk a little bit more about different aspects of this and kind of how this particular area, big picture area, has such a big role and influence on our hormones. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about is stress. And I like to talk about big picture stress. So I'm talking not only day-to-day stressors, but I'm talking about what kind of stress capacity do you have? How big is your bucket? I like to call it, how big is your stress bucket? What else is in that stress bucket that we can take out? You're never going to have an empty stress bucket. That is not the goal either. The goal is never to not feel stress. The goal is to have enough capacity and have enough room that you can handle influxes of stress without it significantly impacting your health. And I'll tell you, the reality is based on the 10 plus years I've been in the industry, on all the work that I've done on my own health and healing journey, the work that I've done just in this practice with well over 1,000 women at this point that we've helped and supported along their healing journey. If I had to pick one root cause of chronic health issues, this would be it. Now, once again, there are so many pieces and layers to this, and I'm going to talk about some basics once again.
this is a big picture kind of podcast. I'm not going into the weeds into a lot of this stuff. I want to talk more bigger picture. You have to find a way to manage your stress. And sometimes it is not comfortable. Sometimes that means changing patterns, looking at ways that you are living. If you know my story, especially from the last couple of years, I completely changed my life. Completely. And it was because of my nervous system. It was because I needed to. And it has been life changing and it has supported my own healing journey in a variety of ways that I think are continuing to unfold for me. And last year dealing with, my husband's cancer journey and all the things that went into that, that was also a different layer of stress and different kind of stress that was going on for the vast majority of last year that I'm still in part recovering, if you want to call it quote unquote recovering from. But stress is so big. It's so important. And so many women are carrying all of the burden in their lives. And a lot of times extra burdens that maybe they don't need to be carrying. And maybe we need to look at some of these patterns that we're holding on to and things that we're doing because we weren't meant to do it all. And it doesn't mean we can't, because I think women are capable of literally anything. We can grow another human being in our bodies and then push it out of our bodies. And it's a live human that you built inside of your body, which is the most amazing thing that we can do. But we can also we can do anything. But the question is, should we have to do everything? And that is where I answer no. So let's talk about stress. And when I talk about stress, I'm talking about the adrenals. So the adrenals are an organs, and they help to regulate stress along with pieces of our brain, specifically our hypothalamus, our pituitary gland, and then our adrenals. And I'm going to be talking about this piece quite a bit. It's called our HPA axis, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. Important side note, we also have our HPT, hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis, that will come up a little bit later on here. So just keep that in the back of your mind for later. So when we're under a lot of stress, what the body is supposed to do when we go into an acute situation, meaning we go into a big meeting, and we're nervous, maybe our heart's racing, maybe we're a little sweaty, and you feel, that little bit of a rush of adrenaline, you feel a little bit more alert. That is cortisol and our adrenals HPA axis. It's cortisol, adrenaline, and we have a few other chemicals that our body will produce in these instances, which is what is supposed to happen. Now, what is not supposed to happen is we're not supposed to be constantly releasing cortisol, or it's supposed to have this very natural curve where it starts at a medium level right as we wake up. About 30 minutes later, our cortisol is going to spike, and then throughout the day, it's going to slowly drop, and it should be the lowest right before bed so that we can go to sleep and have a good night of sleep. So when we look at stress, and we're going to be talking about our three major sex hormones, and and there are other ones for reference, and I will bring some of those up, but we're primarily talking about estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Progesterone, when we have really high levels of stress will steal the precursor to making progesterone, and it's something called pregnenolone. And there's a fancy word for this. It's called the pregnenolone steal, where essentially instead of this pregnenolone being converted into progesterone, it's diverted essentially or stolen to make enough cortisol to function in a high stress lifestyle, which we do not want. Progesterone is our buffer to stress. We need it. If you have a lot of symptoms in the second half of your cycle, it's like the week and a half before your period, progesterone is likely playing a role here. Not saying it's the only thing, and it is likely playing a role. So when we have high levels of stress, basically our body's not able to make enough progesterone because this pregnenolone that we need to make the progesterone is stolen. It's converted into cortisol instead. When we reduce the stress and our cortisol and our adrenals don't steal that pregnenolone, then we have more capacity to actually make enough progesterone that our body needs. Estrogen. This one's not quite as direct and still pretty impactful here. So stress can impact negatively the clearance of estrogen. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later on when we talk about liver and drainage pathways. But this is really important because if estrogen is not properly cleared, metabolized, used, many things can go. Histamine issues are a big one. Breast tenderness, lowered progesterone levels, perceived lower progesterone levels. We can have symptoms of quote unquote estrogen dominance that may not actually be estrogen dominance. The quality of the estrogen may not be as good. So we may have symptoms of low estrogen. It may not actually be low estrogen. It may be a clearance and or metabolism type issue. With testosterone, stress will silence the signal. So with testosterone, once again, a lot of people don't talk about this. So that hypothalamus and the pituitary actually send signals to our body to produce testosterone. So when we have high levels of stress and that hypothalamus and pituitary are really busy signaling to our adrenals, hey, lots of stress going on. We need to prioritize survival and producing cortisol over proper hormone production and regulation, the signal goes down and our bodies will not produce enough, or bodies can not produce enough testosterone. This is really big. The other thing from a cortisol perspective and testosterone, when we look at testosterone being used at a very cellular receptor kind of level, there is some interference when it comes to high levels of stress, cortisol, higher levels of cortisol production, and the body's ability to properly use the testosterone. So not only can stress decrease the body's signal to produce enough, it can also interfere with the actual use from a receptor level to do this. Ladies, stress. You've got to get your stress under control. And I know from personal experience, I have burned myself out too many times that I would like to count or admit publicly and often privately. This is so big. And I know what it's like to be in a relationship where you're doing everything. And no, I don't have kids, and that's a whole other layer of that. But I do know what it's like to be in a relationship where you're doing everything. You're responsible for everything, all the schedules, all the things, all the finances, all the things. It's too much. All the food prep, all the food shopping, all of the things. Let alone, for me, that has also looked like being a main financial provider, running a business, trying to build a business, trying to grow a business by myself. Now I have a team, which is so helpful and can still be very stressful. I have not prioritized sleep in various parts of my life. I have not prioritized the building blocks of building these hormones from a nutritional perspective, from an exercise standpoint, from a nervous system standpoint. I have a lot of trauma. I have a significant trauma history, and I know a lot of you do as well. There are some very basic things here that I'm going to talk about when it comes to cortisol levels. I've done a lot of episodes on cortisol. If you want to hear more about the stress bucket, I actually did. We have and I'll put a link. I'll make sure we have a link below to a video called The Stress Bucket. Honestly, this is one of my favorite things to talk about because It really helps. So I see when I talk about this to clients, I just see the light bulb go off and them understanding about increasing our capacity for stress, increasing the size of our bucket, and then also what can we take out of our bucket. So a couple places to start. Simple, seemingly simple places to start. And some of these have multiple benefits, which I'm going to continue to talk about. So the first one is you need sleep. Sleep is non-negotiable. You need enough sleep and you need good quality sleep. If you're not, we need to support that in whatever that might look like. If you are waking up, if you have a really hard time falling asleep, your brain won't turn off. If you're consistently waking up around 3 a.m., give or take 30 minutes, and you have a hard time going back to sleep, often you're having a cortisol spike at the wrong time, and that is in the evening and or in the middle of the night. Cortisol Manager, which is a supplement by Integrative Therapeutics, can be a temporary and decent option to help and support. And this is an all the time kind of thing. If you only notice sleep issues in certain parts of your cycle, yes, this can help, and it is not where I'd recommend starting. Progesterone support in the variety of ways that we're going to talk about today would be where I would start. And all these other things do go a long way when it comes to cortisol, stress, and regulating our cortisol curve. So you need sleep. You also need to find a way to manage your stress, and it needs to not be alcohol. And I'm going to talk about alcohol a handful of times here. Not saying don't drink, because that is, I don't think people have to not drink. And if that is your main coping mechanism, if food is your main coping mechanism to stress, we need some other tools in our toolbox. Mindfulness work goes a long way for this. And this doesn't have to look like some crazy big thing. This could be as simple as maybe when you first wake up, spend 1 minute. You have 1 minute. Do this while you're going to the bathroom in the morning. Do this while you're in the shower. Do this while you're brushing your teeth. You have time. You have 1 minute. Do some deep breathing. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Make that exhale just a tiny bit longer than the inhale. That immediately puts your body, after about 5 of those deep breaths, your body usually starts to go back right into a parasympathetic mode, which is a relaxed state, as opposed to a sympathetic or stress state. Start there. Now, is that going to fix everything? Usually not. And it is a great starting point. Then maybe before bed, you spend 2 to 5 minutes doing some deep breathing. Maybe you do some tapping, some somatic work. So just shake your body out. Do a brain dump. Break down everything that's in your brain. Do a guided meditation. Do a guided breathwork session. Any or all of these things go such a long way. Here's another thing. Walking. Walking is extremely helpful for your nervous system, among many other things. Go for a 5-minute walk. Do it in silence. Listen to some fun music. Have a 5-minute dance party, a 3-minute dance party. Get your kids involved. Have them do some deep breathing with you. Have them join in on your dance party. Have them do a meditation with you. Teach them these skills too, because it's so important. We all need stress management, coping mechanisms, and coping skills. We all do. We all need these things, and they're so helpful for us. So if you have a significant other, if you have children and they seem to be an obstacle for you, get them involved. It's going to be good for them too. But you got to start somewhere. And I will tell you, when stress gets high, the first thing that goes for most people are these mindfulness practices. This is the thing you should double down on when you're under a lot of stress. And I will tell you, if you get our newsletters, I talked about this in one of our last newsletters. And we just have a busy summer. And when we got married a few weeks ago, it was a really busy couple of weeks. We've got a couple different pockets of those over the summer here. And I will tell you, the mindfulness piece is a non-negotiable for me. It cannot be out of my daily practice. And I will often include even more of it because I need it. And that helps to keep me sane, helps to keep me regulated, helps me being able to continue functioning, all of those things. For me personally, right now, my biggest staple is Christina Rice's, or she's also known as Christina the Channel. She has a membership that's incredibly inexpensive. She also does a 1 week free trial, and she has like 100 different guided energy working sessions. And some of these are more meditation based, some are more affirmations, some are true energy work, some are, she has a variety of different things in there. This has been a game changer for me. And I am not new to energy work. For reference, I'm also not new to any of the trauma work and any of this kind of deeper work. And it continues to be a game changer for me from a physical health standpoint and also from a business standpoint. It has been a real game changer when we talk about law of attraction, affirmations, when we talk about manifestation. This has been huge, and I'm about to dive into her Ultimate Manifestation Challenge. By the way, I have done this because I have worked with her personally. And I will share a link below. If this does not resonate with you, that is totally, totally fine. And I also have a handful of clients that we work with that are also doing her app right now that I've recommended this to, and they're seeing some good results. And once again, some of them are pretty new to this kind of work, some of them aren't. And across the board, we're seeing some really interesting and really positive shifts. So definitely worth a look at if any of that sounds interesting to you. By the way, we have no affiliation to her, to this, other than I have worked with her. She has been a mentor for me. She was my introduction into energy healing work, and I have worked with her a handful of different ways and different things over the last 6.5 years. So she is also not new to me. I have met her in person. I have followed her for a long time online. I have been in a variety of different containers with her, and she is one of the people in the energy healing space, in the manifestation space that I trust. And I don't trust a lot of people in that kind of space, and I am also in that space. So um just something that, if that sounds interesting, go check it out. Once again, she does a 1 week free trial of it, and you can cancel at any time. And it's also incredibly inexpensive at $33 a month, and well worth it. She updates things all the time, and she adds new ones in. She does like a weekly schedule. She's got different categories within there. Anyways, it's phenomenal. I have been such a huge fan. Okay, but you need some sort of mindfulness practice. Natural light goes a long way when it comes to cortisol levels too. And maybe that looks like getting some light first thing in the morning. I think that is incredibly beneficial. And if that's not an option, getting natural light in your eyes at any point in the day, also very beneficial. And ideally, this is you are actually outside. And yes, is 15 to 30 minutes ideal? Yeah, that's what usually the research is showing us. And if that starts with 5 minutes, do 5 minutes. It's okay. It's a great starting point. You can always build off of that. Go for a quick walk, do some deep breathing while you're outside, eat your breakfast, do some journaling, do some prayer work, like whatever feels good for you, like go do that, and maybe go sit outside for 5 or 10 minutes in the morning and or in the evening and get some natural light in your eyes if you can. Breakfast. This one is also seemingly so simple. Breakfast is really important for a variety of things, and I'm going to talk about a handful of other things here. But breakfast is incredibly important, especially if you are a caffeine drinker. Breakfast is even more important. And look, men and women's bodies are different. And this is a big one in that if you are interested in fasting, if you are interested in, other types of work, the studies are really clear for women. And by the way, there's not a ton of research that was done on women in the first place when it came to fasting. In that, women do better fasting later in the day versus earlier. A lot of it comes down to cortisol levels. Eating breakfast goes a long way for blood sugar regulation, which plays a big role in your insulin. It plays a big role in cortisol levels. You need breakfast. You need something protein and fat rich, ideally with a little bit of fiber too. Carbs are not the enemy, and make sure you get some protein. Usually I tell most people try and get at least 20 grams of protein. Yes, 30 to 40 grams is probably a little bit better. And if you don't eat breakfast or you eat a pastry for breakfast right now, try and get 20 grams of protein. It not only stabilizes your blood sugar first thing in the morning, gives you a buffer from the caffeine and the insulin spike that can happen when you have caffeine on an empty stomach. It also helps to regulate blood sugar for the entirety of the rest of the day. The entirety of the rest of the day. Just from this one meal. Yes, it is the most important meal of the day. Eat it. Eat breakfast. Eat breakfast ideally within about an hour, hour and a half of waking. If you take thyroid meds or some sort of other medication that needs to be taken first thing in the morning and then you need a buffer, give yourself that hour buffer, but then be ready to eat breakfast. It really, really is that important. Those are some real basics. If you want to add in something else in the morning for to help with cortisol regulation, and I'm going to talk about some other nutrients here as well, have an adrenal cocktail as your first drink of the day. We will link the coconuts and kettlebells. She has Noel Tar, who's also an NTP, just like all three of us who work in this practice. She has some really great recipes for adrenal cocktails. So I will link those. Yes, there are supplement versions. Jigsaw Health is the one that I like. They have a pill form. They have a powdered form. Powdered form's a little salty. It is not everyone's favorite taste. And then they also have travel packets. So even if you do make yours at home and maybe you're traveling and still want to take them, they have travel packets that make it really easy to continue on your adrenal cocktails while you're traveling, if that feels good. And what adrenal cocktails are is they are sodium, potassium, and whole food-based vitamin C. These are three main nutrients, and I'm going to couple in magnesium here, but I'm going to talk about that in the next section. These are three critical nutrients that get depleted during high levels of stress. And so our adrenals start to pull these nutrients from other parts of our body when we're under a lot of stress. So helping to replenish those nutrients helps prevent the adrenals from having to pull it from other places, in which case then we have other issues going on because we don't have enough of these nutrients to support the rest of our body. Especially sodium and potassium, super important for your blood pressure, among many other things. Hydration goes a long way, and there's a lot of downsides of not being hydrated. And I know a lot of you are not properly hydrated. Also super important. If your body's not hydrated, it is stressed. If you are drinking less than 50 ounces of water, straight water a day, teas don't count. Coffee doesn't count. Your little soda things don't count. Water. You can put electrolytes in your water. You can put a pinch of sea salt in your water. You can add some flavoring to your water if you really need it. Be careful of having too much lemon because it will eventually erode the enamel in your teeth if you have it every single day, if you're squeezing like fresh lemon into your water and drinking it. But hydration is super important. We've done a whole episode just on hydration and the importance of it. Okay, so stress management is crazy important. And then keep in mind, I talked very specific cortisol adrenal stress, but also there are so many other things that are stressful in the body. Gut overgrowth issues, nutrient deficiencies, inflammatory foods, inflammation, low stomach acid production. We're going to talk about a handful of different medications and different things that can be very stressful. Not getting enough sleep is very stressful. Just being stressed out all the time, going all the time, not supporting your body appropriately, like not moving too much, eating too little. All of these things are stressful on the body. So we need to look at all of these things. But once again, I've done a lot of episodes on stress, big picture stress, and how to look at this. So definitely feel free to go back and listen to some other episodes if you want to dive deeper into the stress component of this. Okay, let's talk about nutrition here next. And I'm now realizing this is probably going to be a two-parter once again. Okay, nutrients. Nutrients that are incredibly important to hormone health. And so I'm going to walk through, and then I'm also going to walk through, after I go through all of these, which I may not even get through today, I am going to talk about some different things to add to support kind of some different hormones here. And that may end up being in the next part of this. But let's start with magnesium. Magnesium is so important for hormone health. So first and foremost, super important for HPA axis support, which is all of the stress support that we just talked about, that I just spent almost 30 minutes talking about. Magnesium is also really important. Food-based magnesium can be super good, but we need it, especially with high levels of stress. So magnesium plays a role in HPA axis support. Obviously, it's important for all three of the hormones we just talked about. It's also, magnesium plays a really big role in our phase 2 detoxification. Now, when I talk about detoxification, primarily during this episode and probably part 2 here, I'm talking about the liver goes through 3 phases of detoxification, and this is naturally. All of our bodies do this. It is largely done in our liver, or our liver does a big, big chunk of this. And it goes through 3 phases of detoxification. We're going to be talking a lot about phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 2 plays a big role in all hormones. Phase 1 plays an especially big role in estrogen levels, which we'll talk about here more. But when we talk about this phase 2 liver detoxification, this is the biggest piece, or say chunk, the biggest part of the process when it comes to getting things out of our body that our body does not want or need. And this can be anything, by the way. This isn't just hormone related. This is anything. This might be toxins. This might be pathogens. This can be hormones, sex hormones, stress hormones, thyroid hormones, anything else our body deems it does not want or need, that it wants to push out via waste, whether that's through urine, stool, sweat, or those are the main ones. That is what this is doing. And it's converting these things into ways that our body can get out of our body. So maybe if it's going to convert something into more of a water soluble form of excretion, well, we're probably going to excrete it via urine. Our stool obviously plays a big role in this. And then so does sweating. And I am gonna talk about the lymphatic system and some other things when it comes to drainage in just a bit. But magnesium plays a really big role in this phase 2 detoxification that our body naturally goes through. Magnesium also plays a big role in insulin sensitivity. And I've got a whole section on blood sugar regulation here that we are also going to talk about. This is really big. When we have dysregulated blood sugar, and this might be too much sugar, this might be too little sugar, this might be too much insulin, too little insulin, this could be a signaling issue within the cell, this could be a communication issue within our body. There's a lot of pieces that go into blood sugar regulation and dysregulation. And so it's not as simple as, oh, you're just insulin resistant. Yeah, that is a piece of this. And if we zoom out, there's a lot of different pieces that go into blood sugar regulation. And I will tell you, this and anemia were 2 of the most complicated sections when it came to learning blood chemistry. So this is not something I can just really simply and easily talk about because there's so many pieces and so many layers to this. I've also done full episodes on blood sugar regulation, and I'm going to continue to talk about it more as we continue here. But magnesium plays a really big role in insulin sensitivity, which plays a big role in overall blood sugar regulation. Magnesium plays a really big role in our body's ability to sleep, and quality and quantity. That's why a lot of people take magnesium glycinate. And magnesium glycinate is probably one of the best forms of magnesium when it comes to sleep, mood, restfulness, kind of overall. It's typically taken in the evening. It can make some people sleepy. Usually it just helps someone to relax. If someone's really prone to headaches and or has a history of head injuries, like my husband, magnesium is particularly important. But magnesium is pretty easily drained. And so a lot of us aren't getting enough magnesium. And a lot of people are, by the way. I do not think everyone needs to supplement with magnesium. Do I think it hurts most people? No. I have seen one case over the years of someone who had way too much magnesium where it was actually doing some harm. And we were seeing some kind of downstream negative impacts of it. But magnesium is really important. The form is also really important. One thing I always like to mention when I talk about magnesium, if you are taking the magnesium calm supplement, it's just called calm, it is not calming. It is made from magnesium citrate as the primary form of magnesium. Magnesium citrate is a stool softener. That is its only job. It is a stool softener. It is often not the best form of magnesium for most people. Neither is magnesium oxide. There are many other good forms of magnesium, but if you're looking for something to help with just basic rest, magnesium glycinate is a great option for many people. Magnesium also plays a role in making progesterone. So if we are magnesium deficient, we may not be making enough progesterone, in which case our stress tolerance or our stress resilience naturally goes down. We have more stress, which means then our body's further depleting magnesium and going through magnesium. Big picture here. So stress depletes magnesium. So does high sugar intake. So does high alcohol intake. And so do many medications. A lot of people don't know about the last one. And I'm not going to name, there's a laundry list for reference of medications that do deplete magnesium. If you are on medications, and by the way, this is something that we do with all of our clients, whether they know it or not, because we don't always explicitly talk about it, but we always have notes on it and do some research on it before we start working with someone, is we look to see what nutrients are depleted by medications they're on. And we make sure that we're replenishing those, whether that's through nutrition and or supplemental forms. So if you are on medications, maybe double check to see, it's a quick Google search for reference of what medications are depleting what nutrients. And it doesn't mean you should supplement with all of those. It means keep an eye on those. And a lot of times what we'll do is we know what medication someone's on. We'll take a look at nutrients that are being depleted. And then we're seeing kind of with their blood work and symptoms, what might be the best way to support their bodies naturally. Once again, whether that's through nutrition, which is always going to be our first line of defense, and then that may be also supplemental depending on the person. Okay, so that's magnesium. Next one is zinc. Zinc plays a really big role in ovulation. So if you're trying to conceive, zinc is especially important. By the way, if and when you stop ovulating, that starts to decrease and or eliminate the production of progesterone. I'm going to repeat that. Ovulation plays a big role in triggering the body's production of progesterone. If you are trying to conceive, this is really important. Also, I'm going to disclose this right now, and I'm also going to talk about it at the end here too. Do not willy-nilly supplement with zinc by itself. You can cause a whole host of other issues. The zinc and copper balance and ratio is super, super, super important for a lot of things, including iron levels. Super important. Now, if you're going to supplement with zinc by itself because you are acutely sick, you've got a cold, you got a sinus infection, you got a little something, 3 to 4 days max. Max. And then pause. Now, you can supplement if your body needs it with zinc and copper And many good quality multivitamins, they're having a great ratio of zinc and copper too, which is typically going to be about 15-1 zinc to copper. We usually want to also test this. Okay, so zinc plays a really big role in ovulation. It also plays a really big role in the direct production of progesterone. It also plays a big role in testosterone synthesis, so making testosterone. Zinc is also really important for proper stomach acid levels. Super, super important. Zinc is often depleted by stress, by many forms of birth control. Many forms of birth control. Low protein intake. So many women have a very low protein intake. For most women, unless you're very, very small and or short, most women need at least 100 grams of protein a day. Now, if you are taller, if you are working towards a body recomposition, weight loss, anything like that, your protein need goes up. Protein is so important for so many things, including hormones. This is also not going to be the last time I talk about protein intake. Another thing that really depletes zinc is parasite overgrowths. And once again, this is pretty common. I'm not going to go too deep into this because I've talked about it on so many episodes, but blood work is the best way to look at parasite overgrowth patterns. Stool testing is not very accurate when it comes to this. It's more common than you think. Parasite overgrowth can also have a direct impact on hormones. Direct negative impact on hormones. Okay. B vitamins, super important as well. So B vitamins are just, well, kind of like big picture energy support from a cellular perspective. So this plays a big role in a lot of things, not just hormones and building our hormones. B vitamins play a really big role in that phase 2 detoxification that our body goes through. And I'll say big picture, just overall the metabolism of estrogen, which is extremely important. Not only is estrogen production important, but the way our body metabolizes estrogen is also, I would argue, as important as actual estrogen production, because that dictates a lot of how our body's using estrogen. Different pathways do different things. I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. So all of that plays a big role. B vitamins also play a big role in progesterone levels. B6 in particular can help to lower prolactin levels, which when those are elevated can have a negative impact on progesterone and testosterone. Prolactinomas are decently common. They're not incredibly common, and I've seen quite a few cases of elevated prolactin levels that can then play a really big role on trying to conceive. So B6 can play a big role here. Now, once again, this is not a just go supplement with B6 or just go supplement with a B complex. There can be negative side effects for there too. If you've ever taken a B complex and all of a sudden you notice your skin is breaking out more, it's from the B complex. Some people's body just naturally does it. I am one of those individuals. I have tried many, many B complexes over the years, and they all caused my face to break out horrendously. And I have found other ways through different multivitamins and different things to support my B vitamin levels during higher periods of stress or when I've needed extra B vitamins that don't involve a B complex. Also, just keep an eye on, we can test most of your B vitamins, by the way. And there's a variety of tests, whether that's through blood work, you can do most of them through blood work, but we can also look at these through, for example, an organic acids test is a really good way to look at your B vitamins, and it looks at your B vitamins. It also looks at neurotransmitter pathways, drainage pathways. We get a great look at your gut from a yeast, fungus, and bacteria standpoint, mitochondrial health, so many different things. Another reason I love that test so much. And then B9 also supports proper estrogen clearance. And what I mean by clearance is the body's ability to get out estrogen that it doesn't want or need, which goes back into the detoxification kind of pieces here. So B vitamins, super important. Iron. Iron is also super important. Iron is a foundation to energy levels. If we don't have enough iron in our bodies, we don't have enough oxygen, which is very, very stressful on the body. Conversely, if we have too much iron, that is also very stressful on the body. So we need it right in the middle. If you are nervous about your iron levels, please go listen to my iron episode I did not too long ago. Don't just look at ferritin. Don't just look at your serum iron. Don't just look at iron saturation. Don't just look at total iron binding capacity. We need to look at all of those things together, plus a whole bunch of other things. Sometimes it's not a real iron issue. Sometimes it's an inflammatory issue, an infection issue, toxin overload, gut health, nutrient deficiency issue, among a handful of other things. Now, this is a little bit ironic. So iron's needed for proper hormone production. If we have really heavy periods, that can also deplete our iron levels. So it can be a real catch-22. I have seen this pattern where some women, they are only looking at their ferritin. Their ferritin is quote unquote low. They start supplementing with iron, and then their period starts to get even heavier. It's because it was never a real iron issue. And it wasn't just an iron storage issue. It was an inflammation issue, nutrient deficiency issue, and more iron was not the answer. So there's a lot of individualization that needs to happen when we need to look at iron levels. There's a lot of different pieces to that. Iron also plays a really big role in our thyroid function. And remember, so our HPA axis and our HPT axis. If our thyroid is having issues, that is stressful. Hormones can contribute to thyroid dysfunction. Thyroid dysfunction can also contribute to hormone issues. Yeah. So we need enough iron. We also need not too much iron. Big piece here. Kind of going off of the thyroid piece, we also need enough iodine and selenium. This is a big piece when it comes to thyroid hormone production and then also conversion. And this is also a big piece why we want to look at when we look at the thyroid, we don't just look at TSH and or T4. We really need a bigger picture to understand what is really going on with our thyroid. Is the thyroid a symptom? Is it also a contributing factor to the issues going on? And sometimes the answer is both. This is where order of operations, as to we need to look at all of the pieces all together and figure out what are the biggest contributing factors, the biggest root causes, if we want to call them, to all of the dysfunction and support the body appropriately. And that might look like hormones, not usually first. Usually there's other things going on that we want to look at first. And then I think this is where I will kind of wrap up and then start back in part 2 with more specific nutrients and talking about food and eating and how to do that, and then continue on here. But the last big piece I want to talk about is cholesterol. And in our blood testing part 2, we did a decent job diving into cholesterol. And I'm also going to do a little bit of education here when it comes to cholesterol, because there's a lot of misinformation around cholesterol. There's also, I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist. And when we look at some of the science and the timing of things, they're not really conspiracy theories. And I want to talk about where this 200 marker came from when it came to Western medicine and this where our cholesterol is quote unquote supposed to be. So cholesterol is actually the real raw material, like the baseline raw material of hormones, of all hormones for reference. It's the starting point for making progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, cortisol, DHEA, and aldosterone, which I'm not going to talk about too much about aldosterone, but it's related to stress. We need cholesterol. Women, we need more cholesterol because we have more hormones to produce than men. Yes, men also have estrogen, they have some of these other hormones, and our body is constantly making all of these hormones and at different levels, and there's fluctuations within all of that, and there's so many different pieces to this, and cholesterol is the backbone of hormone production. It's the backbone. Super important. So low-fat diets are really bad for hormones because we need cholesterol. We need cholesterol. I have also seen this where some women are put on statins, and we have some really negative side effects from a hormone side of things. And I've seen some really crazy things happen. By the way, cholesterol is also really important for our neurotransmitters. All of the drugs that keep us happy, all of the chemicals that keep us happy, cholesterol is also really important for all of those. Production and transportation of these things to make sure they get to the right places in our body. And so when we don't have enough, we're not producing enough, and or the transportation issue. So these things aren't getting to the right places. And I've seen women start dealing with extreme anxiety, and it's because their cholesterol's too low. We also see this a lot in mold clients and clients with heavy levels of toxin overload issues. This was me, by the way. I had heavy metal toxicity, and I had really high levels of both mercury and aluminum, and my cholesterol was low, like crazy low, and I felt it. And as it started to come up into a more optimal place, my mental and emotional health significantly improved, as did my hormone health. So really, really important here. Also, ladies, as we age, we start producing more cholesterol because we need to. Throughout pregnancy, our cholesterol increases, in some cases significantly, like between 300 to 400 is what we would consider normal and optimal in certain cases. Now, we need to keep that in context of everything else. That is something that naturally happens throughout pregnancy. Now, it does drop back down postpartum. Depends on the woman, depends on their body quite a bit here. But that is something that naturally is supposed to happen. Naturally. We need more because we need more support in hormone production and transportation. Go figure. Really important here. Also, please look, I am not going to share all of the studies here because there are so many at this point, but if you are still under the impression that dietary cholesterol impacts your LDL-C, HDL-C, and triglycerides, that is not accurate. Sugar, processed foods, and these forever chemicals are the biggest influences for those in particular. Now, if you think you also have a family history of high cholesterol, I'm going to burst your bubble here a little bit too. It's actually pretty rare. Yes, there are some people. However, there is one marker that tells us this, and most physicians don't run it. Some cardiologists don't even run it, and that is LP little a, and it's capital L, lowercase p, and then in parentheses, it's a lowercase a, LP little a. This is the marker that tells us if you have a genetic predisposition to having a harder time breaking down saturated fats. And if you do, yes, let's look at your saturated fat intake and make sure your body has the capacity to handle it. And we may need to decrease that just a little bit. Only if you have that elevated marker. That is the only one. If you want a deeper look at your actual heart health lipid profile, lipoproteins, an NMR, Nancy Marie Roger, NMR lipoprofile is what you want to look at. And that's going to look at a variety of markers around not LDL-C, which is on the regular one, and HDL-P. Once again, HDL-C is on the other one, on the standard one. The standard one, yes, we want to look at metabolic health. Blood sugar regulation plays a big role. Nutrition does play a role, but more from a whole foods-based diet is going to help lower cholesterol for a lot of women. Decreasing sugar intake, decreasing processed foods, all that kind of stuff plays a really big role here. Once again, just want to mention this whole, our cholesterol should be under 200. So if you want to look at this, there is some real research behind this. And if we look at when the change, so it actually used to be 300. The recommendation used to be as long as your cholesterol was under 300, you were deemed okay. And you were not given a statin or not recommended a statin. And that changed at one point. And the change happened, and once again, you don't have to believe me. You can go do your own research. I have done enough research that I feel very confident in this. That when the patent for the original statin was about to expire so that many pharmaceutical companies could start making this, there was a push, not from a scientific data-driven standpoint, not from a research standpoint, not from a what is most optimal for our health standpoint, but from a profit standpoint. They argue that now the number should be 200 instead of 300. I promise I'm not making this up. Once again, you also don't have to believe me. Once again, go do your own research into this and the timeline of this, into when this happened. Go look at the actual research behind what our optimal lipids are supposed to be, what our cholesterol levels are supposed to be. That 200 marker is made up. It is not based around the research. And if you do see research around either side of this, look to see who funded it, how the study was done, how many participants were in the study. A lot of studies have been done that have been influenced by whoever could profit more from this. We know this. We know this happens. Who funded the original studies around sugar intake? A lot of the big food companies that were producing a lot of these, like sodas that were very high in sugar, or foods that were very high in sugar. And they were deemed like, no, sugar's not the problem. Fat's the problem. We'll do low fat everything and then load everything up with sugar. We know now that that's a big problem. So when you look at your research, always make sure you're looking at who funded the study, how big was the study, were women even included in this study, what age were the women of the study, were they 20-year-olds or were they 90-year-olds? We need to look at all of this. Not all research is good. Many research studies are good. Many are also not good. Look at this. Here's the other thing about cholesterol. Our body will start making its own. It's so important that our body knows how to produce it by itself. However, if we don't get enough and the body does have to start producing it, our liver's the one taking a hit here. And our liver's the one driving that, in which case it has a less capacity to do other things it needs to do, like help to regulate blood sugar, like help to metabolize estrogen, help to get all of these toxins and waste products that is in our body that it doesn't want and need out of it. Producing bile and storing it in our gallbladder so that we can properly break down fats and be able to use those in our body. All of this is really important. So really think about this. Couple other things around cholesterol. And just cholesterol and overall energy kind of stress production. If your calories are too low, this is a problem. It is too stressful in the body, especially if you don't have enough fat in your diet and or protein. By the way, those are the only two essential nutrients that we absolutely have to have to survive. Low calories, like significant calorie restriction. Some people should pay extra attention to this one, especially if you're on something that suppresses your appetite. Often will lead to elevated cortisol levels, which means that you're going to fall into that pregnenolone steal and not make enough progesterone. If your body fat starts to drop too low, your body can't produce enough estrogen. Your progesterone production drops. That's also if you don't have enough fat, by the way, body fat, and also you're not eating enough fat. And then if your body doesn't have enough energy, whether that's through not enough calories, not enough cholesterol, not enough fat, not enough of a variety of nutrients, ovulation's going to be negatively impacted, which then we're going to see issues with progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen. All super important here. I'm going to leave it there and I'll pick up on some foods that can be particularly helpful and then dive into other pieces of this next time. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, follow if it resonates. 5-star reviews really, really, really do mean the world to us. Yes, I do read all of them. We get alerts. I do get very excited when I see new reviews or new stars coming up. So yes, I do look at this. We're not that big of a practice. We have a handful of, for a larger practice than many individual practitioners, and we're not humongous where I am still looking at all of these things. And yeah, it does matter to me. So 5-star reviews really, really, really do mean the world to me. And be sure to stay tuned next week for part 2.